Welcome to the first preview video on this channel ahead of UFC 249, and I cannot wait to get started. If the fight's going to go one way, it's looking like a knockout.
I hope it's not a sensible, technical sort of fight. We just want war in this one.
He shouldn't be in the UFC anymore. Whoever wins, I believe, is the best bantamweight ever. Who of the most fierce people in the division right now? We're going to start with the headline of a prelim, CERRONE Pettis. This fight shows how big the card is, because when you've got a serious fight like that, that's not even on the main card. It's rare, and it happens about 2 times a year, possibly maybe 3, when you've got this many fights, incredible fights on one card. If Pettis comes out with a win, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he does so. That's going to be fantastic for him in his career. Maybe it could push him on to get back into top 15 or maybe top 10. I'm not sure where he stands at the moment, because you know, he's not in great form, but I see Cerrone winning this. I'm going to crack on and say he's going to be frustrated after the McGregor loss, and especially the way it happened. A lot of people were saying he shouldn't have been involved with the McGregor fight at all, and it was just a walkover fight for McGregor, and that's going to have frustrated him. You know, we see with him many times where he'll have 3 losses in a row or whatnot, and then come back and go on 3 win streak. So with Cerrone, he's never down and out. He's loved by everyone in the UFC. Obviously, most wins in the UFC as well. An absolute veteran, but we don't want to see him go yet. So I'm going to call Cerrone KO for the first fight. Just before we move on, I'm going to say the first question: Pettis, should he stay in the UFC if he loses the fight? Not all the questions will be who's going to win, who's not going to win. Some questions will be, some questions won't be. I want to just make it a variety, of course, and we'll go on to the next one. Now we go straight onto the main card where the business starts, and it starts with a heavyweight battle between CASTRO and Greg Hardy. So, of course, with Greg Hardy, we've got someone who's just come off a top 5 opponent against Volkov. He had no business being in there with him, but it was a massive learning curve. And slowly but surely, it's one of those where the fans are gravitating towards Hardy, I believe, because of him taking these short notice fights like he did against Volkov, getting knockouts. And although he got off to such a negative start, people are going to start to reason with him the harder he works. And if he takes it's the short notice fight that I think helped him, because it's like, okay, you're really serious about this in MMA, and you're a changed man almost. And if he wins at the weekend, I really think he could start maybe top 10 opponents, start fighting them and work his way into the division a lot more, because he hasn't fought anyone of note really up until the Volkov fight, which he didn't look, you know, comfortable in at all. He's got so much more riding on it. He's a bigger name, and I feel like he's going to rise up to that statement, rise up to his potential, I believe. So yeah, I'm going to go for a KO for Greg Hardy. Let me know what you think of that first fight. We move up the card into what is going to be a cracker, absolute fireworks. We've got KATTAR versus Jeremy Stephens. Now, they're both in need of a win massively. They're both coming off a loss. They're both lost as a beat. However, Stephens hasn't won in over 2 years now. So he's going to be putting everything on the line, which is why it's going to be so exciting. Furthermore, both of their last 2 wins have been by KO, and KATTAR, the last 3 wins have been by KO. So if the fight's going to go one way, it's looking like a knockout at the moment, which is very, very exciting. And a lot of people were questioning why this fight's high up on the card, higher than Cerrone Pettis, but I think it's more of a business standpoint. As Cerrone Pettis is the one just before the pay-per-view event, so if people watch that fight and think this is awesome, they're going to buy the pay-per-view, which is why that fight is so low on the card, I believe. But whatever happens, this fight right here, Stephens-KATTAR, has car crash written all over it in a good way, in terms of people are getting knocked out, someone's getting knocked out, and KATTAR is my pick. I'm going to stir the pot here. I think Stephens is a very good fighter, but in my opinion, he's been in the UFC since 2007, and he's had many chances against this level of opponent. And KATTAR's he's got crisper boxing, I think, and it's gonna be a stand-up fight. So this is not the fight you want to go get the tea and biscuits for. Trust me, wait for this fight, and you're gonna want to watch the rest of the thing. It's gonna be late for the UK viewers, but you're going to want to watch this fight, and it's going to lead into some exciting fights next, which is a heavyweight battle of two of the most fierce people in the division right now. You've got Ngannou and Rozenstruik. Rozenstruik's last 4 victories by KO, Ngannou's last 3 victories by KO, and they're all on a 4-3 win streak. Ngannou, however, has a much better resume. He's beaten 2 former world champions in Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos. So for me, I have to pick Ngannou. You can't pick Rozenstruik because he's beaten over him, yeah, but he was losing that fight, and it was in the last 10 seconds of the fight where he knocked him out, which is a positive because he's going to have a lot more stamina against Ngannou in the latter rounds. But Ngannou's just an animal, and I think out of them two, Ngannou's just a bit more seasoned, and I think that's going to be the potential factor. This is a very, very interesting fight though, because of course there's no crowd to boost them on, so it might not actually be what everyone's thinking of, a world level, like, exciting knockout. I don't know if it's going to be that because there's no crowd to boost the momentum of the fights, and when they're landing, there's going to be no reception, so that might be a big factor as well. But yeah, as I say, Ngannou for this one. The question for this fight is going to be, do you think the crowd will affect the outcome of the fight? That's going to be up on the poll now. Got 2 more fights to go now into the big boys. The co-main event, the title fight, Cejudo versus CRUZ. Listen, we've got 2 of the best bantamweights in the UFC history. If whoever wins, I believe, is the best bantamweight ever in the UFC. We've got CRUZ, who's the first ever bantamweight champion and the longest reigning, versus Cejudo, who's beaten the best ever and only ever flyweight champion, longest ever reigning title reign in UFC history. Cejudo's just beaten DJ. However, CRUZ has beaten DJ, but at bantamweight, which wasn't DJ's desirable weight. But you've just got to look in terms of their GOAT status, how massive this fight is and how technical this fight's going to be. It's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be like a scrap or anything. They're both going to be very technical in how they move. Cejudo can adjust to how CRUZ fights, as we saw against Morales. He was stinging Cejudo very early on, but Cejudo adjusts very well and then turned it in his favour and made Morales look like the worst fighter, even though the first round Cejudo was getting absolutely battered. He has the ability to change a fight round in an instant and read MMA in a fantastic way. So I think that's going to do him some good. But for me, I'm going to go with Mr. Ring Rust. 4 years out the ring for CRUZ, I know, but he's come back after years off before and won the belt. He's been obviously had this commentary role with the UFC as well, and I think that's going to have helped him massively because he sees fights from a different view. He's cage-side commentating, but he's also judging people, how they fight at certain times, and that's going to help him when he's in the ring. I think Cejudo's the favourite, and I've got to stir the pot again here and say CRUZ is looking, for me, at one of the greatest comebacks if he wins this, and I'm going to have to back him because 4 years out of the ring to come back and win would be absolutely phenomenal. I don't see him getting knocked out because against Garbrandt in the 4th round, you've got to go back and watch this now. He got knocked down, and the second his shoulder touched the canvas, he jumped straight back up and he's back on his feet. He's not even taking breaths or anything. He's straight back up on his feet and ready to fight. Almost reminds me of how in awe I was when Deontay Wilder knocked down Fury, and he gets up out of absolutely nowhere and no one expects it. But it was almost, of course it's not the same power as Deontay Wilder hits, I understand that, but when you're getting hit by Garbrandt and to get up the second you touch the floor about 3 times across the fight was fantastic. So CRUZ isn't someone that gets knocked out easily. And as for Cejudo, he can use wrestling as well. But he doesn't get hit a lot either. He can take a shot, so it's going to be such a interesting fight. And I'm sitting here unsure on who's going to win myself. But if I had to pick someone, and I of course do, I've got to go with CRUZ because I feel like he's just got a little bit more experience. You know, he's the longest reigning bantamweight champion in history, and just because he's had a layoff, I don't think that's going to affect him. He said before, ring rust isn't even real, so Mr. Ring Rust, prove us wrong, and I'm going to back you. So prove the people at home who may not believe me wrong, I guess. But that's going to be my decision, and this is, it's going to be a cracker. Now on to the main event of the evening, the one that is a fight where it could go one of two ways, similar to NGANNOU Rosenstrike.
Unfortunately now, I don't want to be a downer, but these two fighters rely so much on the reception of the crowd. It may disappoint, and I just want to, before I talk about how exciting it can be, I just want to make people aware how reception of the crowd, certainly for Justin Gaethje, he's a seek and destroy type of fighter. He walks forward no matter what. When the crowd are like roaring your name and things like that, they actually want to fight even more, land more shots and whatnot. And if you're Tony Ferguson, the same, he gambles around the ring, does the most crazy stunts, fly kicking people in the head. But when there's no one to react to what you're doing, you sort of check yourself and then think more sensibly, because no one's going to react regardless of what you're doing. So I hope it's not a sensible, technical sort of fight. We just want war in this one. And if it is war, which I hope it is, Gaethje's going to be coming forward as he usually does. And I believe he'll get a knockdown. I still think this isn't going to affect him. It's the biggest fight of his life. In round 1 and 2, I think he's going to go for broke in round 1 and 2. But Ferguson's been through wars before. He's been knocked down by Pettis. And if Pettis can knock him down, then surely Gaethje can, right? But this is where I think the deciding factor, it's still a very tough fight to call. I wouldn't be surprised whoever wins. But for me, Ferguson, later on in the fight, that's when it's going to pay off. His unorthodox style, moving around the ring, could use his wrestling. I don't think he will, because I believe it's going to stay on the feet. As Gaethje gets more tired, Ferguson's going to implant his game plan more, and that's the way I feel the fight will roll. But it's not going to be an easy fight for anyone. But I have to bet Ferguson on this one, because he's got more to lose. If he loses, he doesn't get that McGregor fight in the future. And he's not going to get the title fight. In terms of if he loses, well, who would he fight next? He's had the interim belt like for so long that it's almost unlucky for him. In fact, it definitely is, because he should have been fighting for the title so many times. So he cannot win. He cannot lose this fight, because he's been. It's almost like Dillian White in boxing. He's been at the top for so long, and he should have had a championship fight, but because he hasn't, he's had to keep winning just to keep his name up there. And even if he takes one loss, then it takes a spark off his career. But that's going to be the video done, the first one on the channel.